we've been talking for a while about the fact that once the pandemic happened, it seemed like everybody wanted to jump on the streaming bandwagon, which made sense. You know, everybody was kind of stuck at home. Everybody was signing up for streaming services like they never had before. And, you know, everybody kind of felt like, well, this is where everything is. But slowly after the last couple of years, we've been seeing that it hasn't worked, and that we've been gradually seeing more and more studios starting to say, you know what? Spending $200 million on a streaming original movie doesn't make any sense. And we've been seeing a lot more kind of gravitating back towards theaters. Well, one of the people who has recognized that this is happening is the CEO of Cinemark Theaters, one of the biggest movie theater chains in America, has recognized that and actually had some pretty interesting words to say recently. This comes from the Hollywood Reporter, where it says this: Hollywood may be seeing fewer tentpoles hitting theaters after the dual actors and writer strikes, but Cinemark CEO Sean Gamble argued the big screen is back coming out of the pandemic during an investors conference appearance on Tuesday. This is what he said. This is kind of interesting. When we talk about our traditional studio partners, for the most part, we're hearing pretty consistently that they're aiming to get back to where they were pre-pandemic. And in certain cases, even go a touch beyond that, Gamble said to the Morgan Stanley Technology, Media, and Teleconference during a session during a webcast. The Cinemark boss insisted that the major Hollywood studios spent too much on streaming content to offset theater shutdowns during the COVID-19 crisis. Now, as Wall Street looks to elusive profitability, the major streamers are more cautious and selective with their content spend budgets to adjust to a more crowded and competitive streaming space. Now, guys, what the Cinemark boss is saying here is not unlike what we have all kind of been saying for the last couple of years. Rob, I even remember back when we were shooting the show out of the Stream studios, we would often have these conversations coming out and saying, all these, like, Netflix is spending how much money on this? And us talking about how this isn't sustainable. Like, they're not going to be able to keep doing this. This doesn't work. And then we started to hear some studio heads, you know, kind of coming out and talking about that and saying, you know, this isn't something that's going to work, that we're re-evaluating our business model and realizing, again, I can't remember which one of the CEOs, but said, it just seems that spending $200 million on a movie that's going straight to streaming and isn't actually going to make us anything, other than trying to be a retention tool, that doesn't seem a wise way to go. And then now we're seeing Apple, you know, they're spending $1 billion a year. On yesterday's show, we talked about how they spent $700 million on just Killers of the Flower Moon, on Napoleon, and on Argyle. But even though that was a huge amount of money, their strategy of making sure they go theatrical first is paying off for them, at least in terms of Killers of the Flower Moon and Napoleon goes. And now we're seeing this theater head saying, this head of this theater chain saying, look, the studios are talking to us and they're saying, yeah, we've spent way too much money on streaming. We are cutting back how much we spend on streaming, and we're going to refocus our energies on theatrical. We want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, Factor. You know, guys, some days it's great to prepare your own meal, but some days it's great to have wonderful, delicious meals already ready to go. Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals makes eating better every day easy. Wherever tomorrow takes you, be ready with pre-prepared, chef-crafted, and dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. You'll have over 35 different options a week to choose from, including keto, calorie smart, vegan, veggie, and more. And there's even more to enjoy with over 55 nutrition-packed add-ons that help make your weekly meal planning even more delicious. So what are you waiting for? Get started today and have a feel-good week of meals ready to go. They've got snacks, smoothies, and more. Discover a wide variety of easy options for the entire day, like breakfast, midday bites, and more. And guys, you get to save. We've done the math. Factor is less expensive than takeout, and every meal is dietitian approved to be nutritious and delicious. So guys, head to factormeals.com/Campea50 and use the code Campea50 to get 50% off. That's code Campea50 at factormeals.com/Campea50 to get 50% off. You know, Rob, this is something that, you know, all three of us have been talking about a lot, but to hear like one of the CEOs of one of the theaters, is he just being optimistic because he's a CEO of one of the theater chains, or is what he's saying ringing true for you?
I think it is ringing true for me because, look, here's the thing. I always talk about this on my own show, that if you have 2 hours of time, it doesn't matter how much the entertainment you're consuming cost to make. It matters how entertaining that entertainment is to you in that 2 hours of time. And it doesn't matter you're spending $200 million on Red Notice or you spend $40 million on a J-Lo movie, The Mother. Which one is more successful? Which one entertains more? And the amount of money that is spent has no correlation to how entertaining that 2 hours of time was. And the more we get gratifying entertainment that is satisfying, no matter what the stories are. I mean, the studios used to give us rom-coms and dramas and historical epics, and they would show us all these different things. And we've been getting, I think, limited kinds of entertainment. And I think what the studios are going to do is go back to that diversity of storytelling where you can't, who thought Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell would make $200 million in a rom-com?
Yeah.
They did. And everyone thought the rom-com was dead. All you do is two people and give them a decent script that people like, and suddenly a genre comes back from the dead. And we're going to see more of that now. And as we know, you put something in a theater, it immediately gives that piece, if it does well, more cachet when it goes to streaming. And what's so odd is the actual ecosystem of Hollywood that was working for 100 years, that they disrupted, is going to come back to the way that it always worked in the first place. What a surprise.
Yeah, it all kind of happened almost in a cycle in some kind of way. Chris, you know, this is also a conversation you and I have had a bunch over the last couple of years, but you're hearing now, you know, the CEO of Cinemark, what he's saying. Like, how does it strike you? Is he being overly optimistic because obviously he wants the movie theater business to do better, or is what he's saying kind of bang on the money? What do you think?
I mean, it's a little column A, column B for me. I think it's a little optimistic, but it does make sense, especially because streaming services have focused on quantity over quality. And we've seen that. You know, the average American spends about $46 a month on streaming services right now. That whole package of streaming services, typically about $46. This is according to Forbes. Now, about 45% of users, though, have cut at least one of their streaming services because it's not worthwhile and because of those adding costs. So you have to make sure that you have your consumer stick around. That's why we are seeing shows now doing the weekly release again. That's why we are trying to actually advertise the films we're dropping on things like Netflix, on things like Amazon. So a theatrical release, we've seen the data. It always does better. It always does better.
Yeah.
That's the thing to do. And I think that people want to go back to movie theaters. I really do. I'm so glad that Rob brought up Anyone But You, because those are the kind of movies too. The rom-com, Reese Witherspoon said this for years about how it is one of the most affordable types of movies to make.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's a smart move. Comedies are really affordable to make. And you can get such a big return on your investment. Same with horror. I know that this is not a genre that I particularly gravitate towards. But, you know, A24 is doing such smart things by doing these really great low-budget horror movies that have a huge return. And when I do see a scary movie, when I experience it in a theater and have my fear happening at the same time as other people's, you know, John, you talk about how that's church all the time, being in a theater with people. And it really is. It's a moving human experience to experience films together and have the same emotions at the same time with people who don't experience your life as you do. So I think people want to get back to it. I think that streaming is not as profitable as people want it to be. They're being much choosier what they're putting on there. So it makes sense to put the focus on getting things back to theaters. So I can see why the CEO is saying this. I think it's going to happen a little slower than he probably would want.
You know, it kind of brings us around to a movie that we're getting ready to watch here shortly, which is the whole stuff about, I almost called it Roundhouse.
Roadhouse.
I almost said Roundhouse, and then I was going to say Grindhouse. Roadhouse.
Jake Gyllenhaal will be doing both of those things. He's going to be roundhousing and grinding.
It's going all over the place. But I mean, especially when, like, we were just talking about what Apple's been doing, right? Like, Killers of the Flower Moon and Napoleon. But I didn't like Napoleon at all. I thought Killers of the Flower Moon was fabulous, obviously. But I mean, those movies didn't do great theatrically, right? People aren't rushing out to see Ridley Scott or Martin Scorsese movies right now, I guess, but they didn't do great theatrically. But then because they went theatrical, when they went on Apple's services, they exploded.
Yeah.
And Apple has been talking about how the reason we've had so much success with them on our streaming platforms, on our various VOD outlets and everything, is because we had this theatrical strategy. And when you look then at a company like Amazon, an Amazon who has had success using the theatrical model, it's incredibly confusing to me that they're taking a movie like Roadhouse with a star like Jake Gyllenhaal, a recognizable IP, and just saying, you know what, we're just going to put it on Amazon Prime. And I mean, that's great. People are going to watch it for sure. But I just feel like, guys, that what the current history is showing us is that if they put it in theaters first, it'll do 2 times, 3 times better on VOD and streaming once they do it. So, like, Rob, what kind of rationale do you think like an Amazon has or any other studio would have right now for still thinking, yeah, you know what? Let's just put this on stream. I can understand if it's not a great movie, if it's a movie that they don't think has any audience appeal. I get that. But when you have movies like, what was the Chris Evans one that I think he did with Ryan Gosling that went on Netflix? Rain Man. Yeah. Awful movie, by the way. Just
$220 million.
But like, why they didn't try a theatrical with that like they did with Glass Onion? Why, this is happening? So, Rob, what's their rationale for this? Like, what do you think in those boardrooms comes up when the CEO asks, what's the benefits of us just going straight to streaming? Like, what do you think those conversations are?
I think that the fact that they have to spend money on marketing theatrically is something that, they market a little bit, but Amazon's not used to spending that kind of money. And you're not looking at $5 or $10. You're looking at $25 million to put a movie in theaters. And that's a big chunk of change. And they don't have a division to even handle that. It's a whole new part of their business. But, you look at David Ayer's movie, his Jason Statham film, Beekeeper. I just looked it up. It's made $150 million. $150 million. They cover the cost of the movie and they cover the marketing. And the movie did quite well. People love that movie. I haven't seen it yet, but you put that on streaming, it suddenly has its earned value that it never would have had it not come out theatrically. And people like seeing that. The thing is, the one thing people want from movie theaters is they want to be, as you say, John, they want to have an experience in a movie theater. And if you're given a film that gives you an experience, you think to yourself, I like being in movie theaters. I just was given 2 hours of joy and wonder. Like seeing Dune, 3 hours in a theater.
Right.
It makes you want to replicate that experience by seeing something new, something else. You see one good movie, you're like, I can't wait to get back to the theater to feel this again. And the better the movies are, and the thing is, we're seeing filmmakers are starting to. I heard an interesting thing that I read an article about how I think a studio executive was talking about. We're going to get more back into the 90s when you had all of these younger indie filmmakers coming out of new filmmakers that are emerging, like the brothers that made Talk to Me. And you're going to see lower budget movies, but they're all going to have a very diverse story. They're going to have diverse stories and things we haven't seen before and different approaches. And they're not going to necessarily be expensive, but they're going to provide that joy and experience that you get in a movie theater, because people are like, wow, I'm seeing something new that excited me, that I'm hearing a new voice that I haven't heard before. And how great is that? And that's what the movies are best at doing.
That's a win for everybody. That's awesome.
Yeah, when something like that can happen, that's absolutely right. It's completely a win for everybody. So the question is for you guys, what do you make of the CEO of Cinemark's statement saying, listen, he's talking to studios, they're talking about how that pipe dream of whatever that streaming was going to be this big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and everybody was pouring all investment, saying they're all pulling back from that now. They're telling them they're repivoting their priority away from streaming now to theatrical. Is he just wishful thinking on his part, or is he being realistic at this point and thinking that stuff? Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget, we have a daily podcast called the John Campea Show podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app of choice. Go and subscribe to it today so it'll be there when you need it.